So I have a love-hate relationship with suburbs. For one, I think most modern American suburbs are unsustainable operations facilitated by banks to turn a quick profit with little regard for actually building good communities and neighborhoods or the environments that are changed in the process. However, I also recognize that a lot of people want the slower and calmer paced living that comes with the suburban environment. Not everyone is destined for the fast-paced city life, and not everyone is destined for the humdrum of the rural experience. That being said, a lot of suburbs are built using very constrained manners. They're not very adaptable, and they're not good at growing down the road. Their sheer size often makes them very costly in the long term to maintain. As roads go into disrepair and houses fall apart, we find that even property taxes very rarely are able to cover these costs. So let's take a look at two suburbs here in New York. One which I think is designed very well and has very much stood the test of time, and another one that I think is also good but has room for improvement. And while I have some criticism to both of these suburbs, I do actually want to say that as far as American suburbs, they should act more as a model than a critique. Most American suburbs are actually built in very high isolation and would benefit greatly following some of the practices that these two suburbs implement. But first, some operational news. Since I published my commuting to work video, the channel has exploded in subscribers and has received an outreach of support. I got so many words of encouragement and wholesome comments. I tried to reply to as many as I could, and I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours, but I really do appreciate all the kind words. Just some more channel news. I'm in the middle of moving between jobs and moving between locations, so you'll see my film location change quite frequently in the next few episodes. I hope to settle down in the next few weeks, but we shall see what happens. Okay, I have more channel updates, but I'll save them for the end of the video, so stick around. So let's better understand different suburban experiences, starting with Bayside Hills in New York City. Bayside Hills is a small single-family housing enclave in the heart of Bayside. Bayside itself is a town in New York City proper that is quite on the edge of Queens. Bayside Hills itself has a lot of the hallmarks of a suburban community, and many from the heart of New York City, such as in Manhattan or LIC or downtown Brooklyn, would regard Bayside very much as a suburb. It's about perspective. Bayside Hills sports all the features of a suburban experience. It's designated to single-family homes. I don't believe there's any duplexes or multi-family buildings here. There are also no shops within the city itself, meaning essentially from the north side to the south side, it's all residential. Yet while this community is walled off from commercial development, there is no part within the suburb itself where you couldn't get to a commercial amenity or some useful shop within 15 minutes. For all the basic amenities, the neighborhood is completely covered within a 15-minute walking distance. There are grocery stores on both the north and south sides of the city. There's a laundromat on the north side in case you do need laundry or your laundry machine broke. Both the north side and south side also have several restaurants that you can hop to and just get a bite to eat. The neighborhood also has a school within its borders. Outside its borders, within walking distance, it also has another public school, a high school, and a community college. If you need a middle school, unfortunately, you're gonna have to go a bit ways out. Let's talk about transit. The city is absolutely wrapped in bus lines. There are 3 bus lines that run tangent and around the city. You have the Q30, the Q31, and the Q27, all of which run very frequently. Just for reference, the Q27 itself, which allows you to go all the way to Flushing or Queens Community College, runs 24/7 and has a reported frequency of 3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5. The Q31, which runs on the north side of town, can also take you all the way up to northern Bayside. And it also stops by the Bayside Long Island Railroad station. So if you want to take the train into Manhattan, it's a quick bus ride away. One thing Bayside Hills does really well is that it's very walkable. Because cars are traveling generally fairly slowly, you never really feel in danger and it's fairly quiet. Quieter than other places in America. But the sidewalks are also really good. There are no dead ends, there are no sudden stops, the quality is pretty good, no broken pavement, just an enjoyable walk overall. There's also a ton of foliage and greenery that keeps it shadowed and cool, which is also nice for the walk. Now, I know this is a channel where I walk, but it would be wrong of me not to include driving opportunities. The south side of the city does connect to the Long Island Expressway. So if you need to drive somewhere, you have a highway option right next door. This is a good suburb. In fact, as far as American suburbs go, I think it might be one of the best. It comes with the characteristics and pleasantries of a suburb. It has many local amenities and options that are in walking distance. But I would be wrong if I said that there wasn't room for improvement. So, If I were to improve Bayside Hills just a little bit, one thing I would do is in the city center, I would add some mixed use zoning. While it's great to have external options to go to, I think a small coffee shop or a bakery in the heart of the city really goes a long way. For one, it becomes quickly a community center where locals can meet, chat, and feel part of a community, but it also promotes small businesses and doesn't force people to have to necessarily leave the community in order to go participate in their business. Okay, let's look at our next suburban area. For this one, we're going to travel to Glenhead, New York, which is out on Long Island and technically not part of New York City itself, but it's part of a town called Oyster Bay in Nassau County. Glenhead is also a sprawling suburb, so I'm mainly going to focus on this southern section here that's below this golf course, which takes up 25% of the county. Again, this suburb is not a bad suburb, and I mean to use it as an example of a better than average American suburb, but it definitely has room for improvement. This lower part of the city is pretty traversable within 15 minutes of walking. The town really has two regions of suburbs, this southern point here and this northern point up here. Between these two suburbs, there's a street that runs that provides several government amenities, such as a post office and a firehouse. The street also has a few shops on it, such as nail salons and barber shops and small boutiques. The city also has a pretty massive park with a playground and baseball fields, which is honestly really good for the community. And as you travel up this road, you hit kind of a downtown area near the Long Island Railroad. It has a lot of good shops, some nice coffee joints, and also one of the best bakeries in America. The community also has a fairly large grocery store, which is weirdly cut out of the actual borders of Glenhead, but I mean the community uses it all the same. Finally, the town also has a local elementary school in which the locals actually pay quite heavy taxes for their students to go to. In regards to transportation, the city is not great. It does have a bus line, the N27, that runs tangent to the city, but it's a little far out for much of the community to really get to. It also has a frequency of 30 minutes and doesn't run on weekends, which makes it pretty useful for any leisurely use. The Long Island Railroad does run through the city, and it's pretty useful for getting around Oyster Bay itself. For about $3.25, you can use it to travel up and down this area. You can also use it to get to Jamaica, Queens, which if you want to get into Manhattan, you can then transfer from there to get to Manhattan. It's a bit on the pricier side, but it's an option. Yet, with all this being said, the city is very much built for the car and around the car. While all of these amenities exist within walking distance, the locals usually prefer to drive. While it's convenient to have a grocery store within 15 minutes walking distance, especially if you're on the older side, it's not really convenient to walk 15 minutes and then lug a bunch of groceries back home. This would be a great place for cargo bikes, but the infrastructure doesn't really support it. The sidewalk network itself is also in a pretty bad state. A lot of sidewalks are dilapidated or being grown over by weeds. Sidewalks start and stop totally randomly throughout the city. No more sidewalk again. And a lot of areas that need sidewalks really don't have them. While filming, I even caught this woman walking parallel to traffic in the open road. And most of the suburb neighborhoods themselves don't have sidewalks at all. On the part of the city that borders Glenhead Road, the crosswalks themselves are massive and honestly quite daunting to cross. So if I was going to give advice to this neighborhood, the two most obvious criticisms would be the zoning and the sidewalk infrastructure. We talk about induced demand all the time when it comes to cars. The idea that if you build more lanes, if you build more roads, more people are going to use them, more people are going to drive, because you're making it easy. You're allowing the impulse of driving to easily occur. So why would the same not happen if you had good sidewalks and good bike infrastructure? With both of these, you can induce the demand of people wanting to walk, of people wanting to bike around. This suburb is also one of the suburbs that has stagnated in recent years. Over the last 20 years, the population of the city has grown by less than 200 people. If the city wants to survive and wants to be able to continue funding local amenities, I believe it's going to eventually have to open up to multi-use development and facilitate a greater desire for the local community to use local shops instead of driving to Greenvale, Oyster Bay, or into New York City to use those amenities. But again, I want to emphasize, as far as American suburbs go, I think both of these neighborhoods are pretty good. I think Bayside Hills is pretty excellent, and I think in many ways they should actually be used as a model for how you build communities and how you build neighborhoods for a lot of other suburbs and exurbs in America, which quite frequently are just sprawled spaces with no public amenities, with no spaces for the neighborhoods to gather together, and where overall you have a fairly isolated environment. Again, I would love to hear what y'all think about these two neighborhoods in the comments below. I had noticed from my previous videos, I get quite a few comments from people abroad, either in Europe or East Asia, and I would especially love to hear what you guys think about communities, as it really opens up the eyes of myself and potentially anyone reading the comments. Okay, so time for some additional channel news. Like I said, the channel hit a major milestone by passing 500 subscribers, and it continues to grow. I have a lot of content planned for the next couple of weeks, maybe even months. So like, subscribe, and stick around if you want to see more of this urban exploration and urban planning type content. I'm going to do my best to release new content every Monday, but I also have a full-time job, so we'll see what happens. I will also be getting up and running a social media account where I can post updates about the channel. This is where I need the feedback from you guys. What social media account would you think is most useful to get updates on? I know a lot of people use Twitter, but I'm honestly not a big fan of that platform. It's completely cursed. I've tried using things like Mastodon, but it also is just kind of clunky. My preference would be Instagram, but I don't know if it's really a format that facilitates posting updates about a channel. I'm happy to also open up a Patreon, but I think I'll wait to do that once we get closer to 1,000 subscribers. Until I sort that out, the best way to get channel updates is by subscribing and following this channel. Thanks again, friends, and I shall catch you in the next episode.